Very pleased to have with us on the line Marshall Auerbach. He's an economist, research fellow with the Levy Institute, director of Economists for Peace and Security, EPS USA, as in Economists Peace Security USA.org is the website. His Twitter handle is Auerbach, Mauerback. Marshall, welcome. Welcome back to the program.
Tom, nice to be with you as always.
Thank you. You are Canadian?
I am Canadian. Yes, I masquerade occasionally as an American, but I am Canadian, in fact. Okay, great. This is perfect.
So what can Americans learn? First, the ultimate question here is what can Americans learn from what happened in Canada the day before yesterday? But I guess the frame for that question is, or the beginning point for that question is, what happened in Canada the day before yesterday?
Well, what happened was that we got rid of a very divisive and conservative, extremely conservative prime minister. In fact, I would say it's an interesting election from an American perspective, because Stephen Harper, I would say, is the most classically GOP-style candidate that we had up in Canada, in the sense that he was very prone to use social wedge issues as a very divisive means of campaigning, and he used that very, very effectively. He was much more socially conservative, I think, than most Canadians were, but he did really run like a typical Republican did, as opposed to the conservative prime ministers that we've had in the past, who would probably be viewed as moderate Democrats down south of the border.
Mm-hmm. So Stephen Harper, basically the Republican, and what variety of Republican would you say Harper was? Was he a Jeb Bush Republican, or a Ted Cruz Republican, or a, where?
Probably somewhere closer to Jeb Bush. I mean, I don't think he's a religious crazy or anything like that. Although it was very disappointing to see him pander to anti-Islamic sentiment during the election campaign. He had this big campaign against the niqab and wearing it during a citizenship ceremony, and this was ruled illegal, unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, which didn't stop him, of course. But it's one example of the types of things that you might see someone like Ben Carson doing in the United States.
Mm. And that was Stephen Harper.
Yes, very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now Justin Trudeau campaigned on what?
He campaigned on a program of economic growth. He campaigned on a program of being much more adopting policies which are favorable to stopping climate change. He campaigned against the prevailing deficit hysteria, which seems to rule most of the Western world right now. And in fact, that was the most, I think, promising thing, and I think that's the thing that ultimately got him the election, because there is, as you know, another party in Canada which is ostensibly to the left of the Liberals, the New Democrats, and they campaigned for some strange reason on a platform of balancing the budget, and therefore gave the whole platform of economic growth and a much more optimistic platform to the Liberal parties. And
so they ran on austerity, basically?
Yeah, I mean, as incredible as it may seem, I think they must have felt that, a lot of Canadians don't really trust us. We've never formed a government nationally before, so we have to convince them that we'll be fiscally responsible. And in so doing, they effectively disillusioned much of their base, and they didn't convince anyone on the other side anyway. Because I mean, if you're going to preach, fiscal austerity, people are going to go for the real thing. They're going to vote for the Tories. They're never going to vote for you.
Yeah, it's the old joke that Harry Truman, famously told. If people are given a choice between voting for a Democrat who behaves like a Republican or voting for a Republican, they'll vote for the real thing, for the Republican every time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's that line of St. Augustine, "Oh Lord, make me chaste, but not yet." And I think there's the same thing. I used to always say that there's this,
I love it.
"Oh Lord, make me fiscally chaste, but not yet." Well, if you think that chastity is a good idea, and I personally don't, but that's another matter. But if you think that's a good idea, then of course you're going to vote for the party that gives you that. And so it's a silly platform, but it effectively opened up the whole left-wing spectrum to the Liberals, and that has been a problem for the left in the past in Canada. It has been very divided, which is one of the reasons why Stephen Harper and the Tories have managed to govern the country for the last 9 years, even though Canada as a whole is a much less conservative country, I would say, than the U.S.
Right, and Harper never got more than 40% of the vote, did he?
Yeah, that's correct.
So basically, you've got two parties: the Liberal Party, which we could call the Democratic Party here in the United States, and
correct.
the New Democrat Party or New Democratic Party, which we could call, say, for example, the Green Party here in the United States. And those two parties have been splitting the vote, what we would call the Democratic vote or the progressive vote or whatever.
That's absolutely right. And then, of course, you have other regional parties like the Bloc Québécois in Quebec, which is a separatist party, but also has a social democratic orientation. And they were siphoning off a lot of support from the Liberals as well. And what happened a couple of nights ago was that the Liberals managed to recapture a lot of their traditional support in Ontario. They got support in Quebec over the NDP and the Bloc Québécois, and they actually managed to succeed in getting votes in the West. So they got the most powerful national mandate that they've had in the country since 1968, which, interestingly enough, was when Justin's father, Pierre Trudeau, was the first elected Prime Minister in Canada.
Remarkable. We're talking with Marshall Auerbach, economist, research fellow with the Levy Institute, director of Economists for Peace and Security, and a Canadian. And so, he understands this stuff. Marshall, in the last U.S. election, in the 2014 election, there were 5 or 6 Democrats who campaigned as open progressives. Probably one of the most famous is whose name is escaping me. He's been pretty low profile since he won, was the fellow who ran for the Senate in Michigan, as a progressive Democrat. Maybe you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do, and of course the name skips me as well.
He's literally not.
But there's certainly enough of them around. I mean, look, Sherrod Brown has campaigned as a progressive, and it seems to me that a lot of senators like Jeff Merkley in Oregon is another one, and it always surprises me that Democrats are afraid to run away from their most popular programs, as they seem to have done,
or inclined to run away from them, and that's the thing that astonishes me too, and many of the Democrats who ran as so-called moderates, as Republican light, they lost in the 2012 and 2014 elections. And doesn't the experience of Canada just validate this simple political reality that the so-called undecided voters or the low information voters or the whatever you want to call them, swing voters, that they are principally influenced by the zeitgeist, the gestalt, the environment in which they live. And so whichever party most successfully fires up their base, that base is going to be communicating, whether it's around the water cooler in the office, whether it's over the dinner table at dinner, whether it's at the Moose Club or in church. That base is going to be communicating with these low information voters, the middle of the road people, and they're going to convert them. The politicians don't need to become the other party to get the middle ground. They need to stimulate their base.
I agree with you 100%. And the problem that the Democrats have had is that they run away. I mean, give the Republicans credit. Their base may be absolutely crazy, or we may think they're absolutely crazy, but they will never insult them or denigrate them publicly. They will always pay heed to them. The Democrats, by contrast, seem to gratuitously like to offend their base. I still remember Robert Gibbs's comments about the professional left when a lot of us were arguing against some of the healthcare proposals.
Yeah. Rahm Emanuel made similar comments.
Yeah, and why bother? And of course, in 2010, the upshot was that a lot of that base stayed home, and we got a terrible Republican-dominated Congress.
Yeah, and amazing and kind of a bummer. It's like, so the big lesson, I guess, from the Canadian election for Americans is run populist. It works right now in this time. Canada's not that distant or different from the United States.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders is learning that lesson, and I hope it continues.
Yeah, I think he's learning it and demonstrating it. And frankly, I think Hillary Clinton's learning it, and we'll see if she can demonstrate it. Marshall Auerbach, the website EPS USA, as in Economists for Peace and Security. Thank you, Marshall.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Great talking with you, as always.